Good morning. My name is Mischa Gabowitsch, and I would like to welcome you to the Einstein Forum. Today's workshop continues a series of events that we have been organizing under the heading Solidarity in Danger. Talks in this series have covered a range of interconnected topics, including the Brexit referendum and its historical context, last year's elections in France, and the ways in which they reflected long-term changes in demography, Islamism in Germany, the new wave of irrationalism and the philosophical roots of the post-truth sensibility, and the European Union Budapest. In each of these, to the will of the people have taken center stage. And the term that has become commonplace in Western Europe and North America over the past 2 years or so to analyze these and similar phenomena is populism. Of this new debate, definition theorists that have been working on populism for a long time have gained a new resonance in public debate, which has also based on large-scale quantitative data. And I'm going to just skip over some of these very, very quickly. There's been a lot of debate on populism as a phenomenon that expresses the malaise of the countryside vis-a-vis the big cities in a range of countries and Western Europe. There's been populism strategy, different persuasion, authors working in this analyzed speech discourse left on popular authority-related phenomena. Canavan as of that democracy is called the one to politics. Pierre-André populism, that populism can very easily become a term of abuse and often be wary using the term and in fact use this term might tell us more about them than about the people so described. There's also been a lot of debate about a model proposed by Agon in the necessity and strife of democracy and remedy to Habermas as well of deliberation. Müller, popular faithfully want, can also define populism, then becomes defined by anti-elitism, anti-pluralism, exclusivity, etc. And it's also been written and debated that convenient word to describe new style parties that are related to the extreme right of the past, but also different from it in many important respects. So many of them have shifted from an anti-Semitic ideology to sometimes even a philo-Semitic ideology. Some of them in Western Europe have become less homophobic to non-Christian styles, which in Eastern Europe, on the contrary, have become popular, etc. So we will hear echoes of all these debates today, and we will return to them in the final talk of the day by Bart. Unfortunately, will join us not in person, but via. But today's workshop will not concern itself primarily with definitions or with the discourses and strategies of populist politicians. It is populism lessons on to that people invested in. It offers a particular of articulating the value of those places and things, of delineating the anchor, and of defining the enemy. Outsiders whose community and its they are unable to of the past or cliches, richness, locations, in his rigorous explanations of space. One of the founders of humanistic geography writes that, quote, place is a pause in movement. The pause makes it possible for a locality to become a center of the parent place. We speak of resting in another's strength and dwelling in another's love. End of quote. Experiences that becomes a place. These experiences to people's or cultural symbol entirely others for or sometimes experiences or touch business of an important in be observed, however, and their meaning so eludes confident interpretation that they cannot for group planning and action. And yet he contains experience of unique circle can be shared. Christopher writes that this is highly specific. Its meaning, however, is not impenetrably private. All who read the passage and nod in recognition share it to some degree. Recognition, speaking, indicates of sharing a routine, a place, a work, or a TV show. Sharing it with some, but not with others. By being shared with others, the place becomes a place, sense of belonging, in the sense of appearing mundane, a cliché. Do not share. To you, the palace of wonders of my child, another drab or yet another restaurant. Laurent Thévenot developed a sociology and their political, and he is government. What they have evoked is ubiquitous. Examples, even though it might take us some effort to put them in words. Bond is where we insist and confront each other as equal individuals. Is in such attachments at home, where they properly belong. To differ. But talent for ideas, stuff of politics, at their most make people feel that they know exactly how important a place is to us. That they can sense where when they talk about coal mines being closed, a town square being filled with strange-looking people, familiar coffee houses resonating with the sounds of unfamiliar languages. They give us a sense that they mean our coal mine, our town square, our coffee, full of cheerfulness, town square, still as multicolored as a polar bear in a snowstorm. If their talk is inarticulate, halting, and full of grammatical mistakes and logical fallacies, all the better, because that way it mirrors our own differences in articulating the intimate value of our commonplaces to outsiders. Even more populists of commonplaces. Town square may have different reasons, ways of describing, creates it to the common good. But the populist steps in and imposes a single frame. Not the outside. My own square or the TV characters be the same as, and all those who do not share these exact feelings do not belong to us. You may think that place, in the sense I have outlined, matters only to the poor and disadvantaged, those rooted in their traditional ways and threatened by the high urban dwellers. The importance of a sense of emerges in the most apologies. Millionaire tax flight. Stanford sociologist Christopher Young notes that, contrary to common wisdom, the super rich do not constitute a class of highly private jets at the back, where others have gone. On the contrary, the very family and business ties that ensure their continued wealth mean that, in their own way, they are at least as invested in the places they live as other resident areas. Once they have it, they can afford the moving. The page, the tenant class have no such option. Globalization, Young writes, has not meant that elite professionals and the executive class can now live wherever they wish. On the contrary, more important than income earners are in major cities. End of quote. This may be one is not politicians to be wealthy. What emerges is that we cannot populism by looking at the political strategy. And of places mean to the people who inhabit them before try to establish a monopoly on interpreting that meaning. Obtaining that sense requires the courage to, especially difficult when looking at things we already and where relations. That is, we have chosen that to most of few of you have grown up singing. And that is precisely, you might be more both personal things, if that you already have a student. In the case of Hungary, which will be the focus of the talks, they're replacing it at populism and anti-populism for the rest of the European Union. And yet our workshop is not simply about diagnosing the unpleasant, about the way commonplaces become sites of populism. The title of our series, let me remind you, is Solidarity in Danger. Throughout it, our ultimate concern has been solidarities to counter public exclusive will. The title of last year's invited us to in his lecture on refugees in European history, Philippe Thévenot highlighted the solidarities that refugees have encountered in the countries where they arrived, and the ways in which they have, often quite literally, those. Felix Ackermann reflected on how the solidarities forming in response to attacks on European universities may revitalize the search for more meaningful institutions of higher education across Europe. Also an invitation to the model of community. Populism, we need of place. So, for the rest of the day, note that this is a public Einstein Forum workshop to see that yes, where you get a dialogue of sociologists on the one hand, on the other hand, like writers, special talent for drawing out the intimate of common. In a sense, today's session continues this discussion, and I'm saying this, among other things, to stress the fact that of today's talks, which are mostly by sociologists and historians, will be drawn from the artistic community. So the first such moderator is Yves Mettler, a Berlin-based artist who has worked with sociologists for a very long time and who's very interested in the meanings that local communities attach to the places that they inhabit. And he will chair by Laurent Thévenot.
Is that on? Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming. My name is Yves Mettler. I'm a visual artist, and I'm working on places called Europe Squares. I'm very happy to introduce now Laurent Thévenot, professor at the Haute and this. Thank you. Maybe during the little technical connection, we can maybe. That art in the cité in which is from Paris, and as in this, I really want to make it of that into the multiple during these interventions, and I think there is a very fruitful conversation that can go on between of reflections. And what we found out is or what we are kind of taking care of is now several layers or distances of involvement. So in order to keep a play in engage in and not in art there is this problem. It defines often the role or the way of or taking, crushing the big part in. And I think there are many that are tools of participation, trying to invest, have a grain, or you know, you need to when you get to
technical break.
sorry. So the idea is to take populism seriously by contrast to just qualifiers. And the idea is to look at the basis for support, which I think is not directly what populism, but will also make more precise this notion of communication with the meaning of making common and not just transmitting a message. The parts introduced for which is very understand the basis for democracy, the politics of populism that I on with, and we were looking at the in dispute, trying to make legitimate their reference of the possessing bad things, non-humans, who try activity, view of society, orientation, one citizen. So here I'm looking something for with industrial to suggest the step this idea that of through core would be civics, because they already read Mischa Gabowitsch for democratic policy. Originating work yesterday, I don't today. Position of he's here because of routines, the customs, who is able view, single view, be that can be gone. So this is a connection with even in art. Important is because an entry takes from this practice is the idea that orientation of So that they develop of you for me that you are just have the light to say if it's very much particular. Interesting because designing will be his statement about La Princesse. It's typical of this demonstration nowadays where something of the in spirit included the closer to our topic of commonplace. I would mention a fascinating word by Anders Bloch and Marie Melvin about goods. Well, the classical notion is public hearing. You might know of it. It's the idea that you democratically consult the people who are concerned by some. One is really at to place people to, but then it not be for hearing. In this case, it harbor statement and bring element large to something which is public, going in the relation to people are at this in public public space. Later from that problems here are much more diverse when we deal with proximity. So here in spaces, this is thing that you don't set with equipment of it's a very example of that discussion that present dealt with through the position of no, maybe I will go back to this because it's a long story, but it's a very interesting story to see resistance to populism. I just want to take this discussion. In this, some artists deeply involved in the council, in which they collect the impossible projects. In that the nice notion of a collection, which is not just where the populist project. So there is nothing, but they presented at the council this variety of projects. and expressing a kind of difference. There is a transformation of the concern, and this is exactly populist also. These differences has to be again framed. Looking at what they, this is my position. It should not be used for any kind of composition. This is a very different notion of compromise, and it does. When I heard that, not everybody, of course, the people from the national out would not smile at all. So this is she's somewhat humiliated herself. Transform from Santa Monica space. The commonality is built through precise. Please don't think of cliché. So it's a very complex. It's everywhere in social sciences, and it prevents to see the same. So if you say it's shared, well, you just missed the point. Investment of personal concern in a cliché. Cliché is the commonplace. Quick. This is added to, but the director of the post leave this nice bench. Nagan, and it's a baffle, very critical, convenient. Now, an interesting which gives how do you enumerate? In French, it's just marvelous creation from children are a problem. And babies even worse. As quick as you, this is the classical transitional. This is, they bring it to the trees with their parents. To say something about it. And the parents write it, and you see that. She comes back the next Sunday. We look at it for some time. Second, commonality of the it gives light on a historian called history. Of Joseph Brodsky at home. So the familiarization and form, the guy says, well, no need to vote. And also of former going in the direction of this tension between again this care for common reduction. What is the reduction of the commonplaces? Is precisely, of course, the will constantly realize because
you for a discussion.
I can speak about that. It's another issue. No. So French comparison with Michel, or self-centered. So I really understood at that point that there is, to make it individual. It's not my les tripes, my guts. Got accustomed or living. Not only she did not ethnicity, and a possible ending as
check here. The link between